if it was that important for them to control the narrative and to lie about our stories, then it's got to be that important for us to tell the truth. And as I've said before, I think that the only thing that can dismantle a system of oppression is truth.
I'm sure you've had a busy day today, Andra. How are you doing?
I'm great. It's busy doing this, so this is the important stuff. Yeah, it's been good. It's been really good. Yeah, thank you so much.
Good. I was watching the movie and thinking about art and artists and how oftentimes it seems like suffering makes someone's art better or brings a dimension to it that we don't seem to find in other ways. Do you think that Billie Holiday's suffering is what made her such an amazing artist?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of it. I'd like to be like, no, she could have done it without suffering because I love
Right.
her. But yeah, of course, it's a part of art, and it's reflecting, it's reflections, reflective of the times and of our experiences, and it's a herald sometimes. It's healing. Also, I think that music's design is healing at its core, right? I'll never forget about this scripture I read about waters could only be healed with someone playing the lyre. And so, implies that there's something to heal from. And so I think that, yeah, that was a part of her music because it was a part of her story and a part of her narrative and a part of what, you know, was challenging for her, but also strengthened her. There is something to it, but I don't think it's a darkness. I think it's a healing from that pain that really makes art birthed from pain so potent and so powerful.
We tend to think of pain as dark and we don't necessarily know what's on the other side.
Right.
One of the things that we saw throughout the movie was that Billie Holiday struggled, like many people, with addiction. And that was not yet, I mean, and at the same time, that wasn't really the whole of her story. And so, what did you do as an actor to get to know her beyond just what we knew about the worst of her life?
Mhm. I have to say that my research and my getting to know her beyond that really started actually before even becoming an
Mm-hmm.
actor in this movie. I've been a fan since I was 11 years old, so I started with her music, and then went into her relationship with her band members, and then her story about her life and where she was born and or possibly born. It's likely she was born in Philly and raised in Baltimore. Her losing her father to Jim Crow, right? Because no hospitals would take him. Her being raised in a brothel. So my study of hers is years long. Goes way back. Um, and I think in that study of her, you find out about her addiction.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in the study of addiction, you find out about mental illness and trauma, which are the underlying causes of addiction. Addiction is a way to remedy and a way to cope and a way to heal, right? We take medicine for headaches and we take different things. So that is used as a way to stave off the pain and actually very physiologically speaking to stave off dope sickness, right? When you first
Right.
do it. Dope sickness can actually kill you. So there is that desperation there. And then in the study of addiction and the study of mental illness, you have to study, the intersectionality of race, right, in that
Mm.
too, and how Black people have been portrayed in this realm, how we've been criminalized. And when you look at drug addicts as criminals, then you're forced to face race because you see, interestingly enough, when I look at drug addicts and their criminality, I often see Black and brown faces, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so then you go, okay, you look at the war on drugs. So it's sort of this evolving thing that you begin to see this huge fractal of really oppression and the intention to criminalize Black bodies, which dates all the way back to the emancipation. Um, and so, and then you fast forward to the opioid addiction of now, and you go, wow, now that opioids seem to be affecting more young white children,
Mm-hmm.
the narrative has changed. I saw an article a few years ago that showed a young white girl's face that said the new innocent face of addiction, or the new innocent victim of addiction, or something like that, or the new victim, something along those lines, victim, innocent, you know. And so, yeah, you begin to realize it would almost have been impossible for her not to have been an addict. It was,
Right.
yeah, exactly.
When you look at everything she was dealing with, not only with her past, but the way in which the FBI had targeted her and, I think went about it in a really criminal way. It's interesting to see where we are today, where we're still seeing this drug war play out. As you know, now that white people are being affected, all of a sudden they're innocent, whereas in general, Black and brown drug users are inherently criminal. It's interesting to see that it's been more than half a decade and nothing really has changed, at least for Black and brown people. Did that impact the way that you portrayed her in this role, thinking about sort of how history is also part of our present day?
Yes, absolutely. And I would like to also bring up, you had mentioned that the FBI sort of did it in a criminal way. The FBI does everything in a criminal way. That is the nature of the FBI. And I think that that's something that really, really needs to be dealt with in the nation as well, too. The source of that, J. Edgar Hoover being the source of that.
Mm-hmm.
This was a man who was incredibly racist and who was incredibly just homophobic and sexist and all of these things. So everything was gone about the procuring of information of intel, right? I don't even know if you could call it intel. It's literally, it's like sanctioned social media stalking, but for
Mm-hmm.
with all of the access. You know what I mean? It's like, so it's, yeah, that to just sort of say that. But yes, absolutely, that had an impact. Not now. We filmed it in at the end of 2019. So this is
Mm-hmm.
pre-George Floyd. And so everybody asks about the relevance. It was pre-George Floyd, but this was not pre-Khalif Browder. This was not pre-Tamir Rice, Sandra Bland. This is not pre-Malcolm X, let alone all the way back to Medgar Evers, right? This is not pre-them.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, there is a relevance here today. And then when it comes to drugs and race, as you said, it's affecting more white kids. But we don't even have to go back half a decade or to Billie Holiday's time to see that. I think we're seeing a really great, it's not great, I hate to use that term, I just, for lack of a better word,
Right.
seeing a great, really crystallizing example of it right now. The
Mm-hmm.
opioid epidemic is considered an epidemic because it is affecting white kids. Yet again, though, it stopped being an epidemic during the George Floyd case, as we're speaking right now, right? It became criminalized yet again. It became used against George Floyd in this case, so now he was an opioid addict. And so that's being used against him, and he's being portrayed as a criminal and as problematic and as troubling. And in the same breath, at the same time period, just right across the nation, it's an epidemic. So again, this sort of puts it in our face, like, whoa, 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 whoa. It's not like, well, in the 40s we weren't sure. Well, now in the 50s, in the 60s, we are here right now in
Mm-hmm.
2021, and there are the two different portrayals of addiction to the same drug. You know what I mean? To the same types of drugs. So, absolutely, I think first of all, it speaks to how we need to change the way we look at addiction, and it needs to be treated as a mental illness. And we need to speak very, very honestly about race when it comes to addiction, justice when it comes to addiction, and to acknowledge that, yes, this has been something that has been used against Black people and people of color to criminalize and monetize ultimately their bodies.
The prison industrial complex is predicated on abusing Black bodies and profiting off of them. And it seems like nobody in power is willing to have that conversation, even though that conversation desperately needs to be had. And we actually can see some of that playing out right now with the Derrick Chauvin trial in Minneapolis, as we hope that there will be some measure of justice, even though.
I should say Derrick Chauvin, not the George Floyd's.
Yeah, I knew what you meant. But the reality is George Floyd actually is on trial,
And
even though he's dead.
unbelievably so, but painfully so. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
And it's outrageous. It's ridiculous. Like, I can't even believe. I mean, I'm all for not all for the justice system, but due process, whatever.
Yes.
But it's truly outrageous that we have video. We know what this man did. Like, why are we talking about it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. you know, I agree with you, you know what I mean, for due process, but we actually got to change what due process is. You know,
Right.
it's, again, very
Because due process has never really served us at all.
never. It's only, you know, it's never. So those things have to be gutted, you know, and I think that's the very difficult part for people is they realize that your nation's foundations have to be unthreaded so that we can actually sew a new equal fabric that's really based on principles of justice and equality of the greater good, right? You know, ultimately. So, you know, it's difficult reconciling, I guess, for a lot of people.
Do you think it's possible for us to get to this place where we rethink justice and really unravel a lot of the foundations of this country?
I do, you know what I mean? I absolutely do. And I have to. That comes from my faith perspective. I have to believe that it's possible. And so I have to continue to work and continue to speak and function and operate as if it is possible, you know, because if I begin to accept that it's never possible, then you know, even from a spiritual perspective, right? We talk about sort of or right, it's a spiritual perspective and even a scientific one, right? With entropy, right? Thermodynamics, everything will sort of devolve, right, into a lesser form. I still think we have to hold out hope for those triumphs and those victories in between, you know. And yeah, I do. I see a lot of hope in mine and in the younger generation.
Mhm.
Really, they just like I put this with camp parts where they're just not with the shits, you know what I
Mhm.
mean? So there's something really nice about that. That goes, you know, we want to be free. You know what I mean? We want to love people. We want to have a world that, you know, is focused on loving each other and peace. You know, so yeah, I do think there has to be. I think truth is going to be a huge, huge, huge part of that. And I think the reason this Billie Holiday story is resonating with people so much is that she represented truth. Strange Fruit, the song
Mhm.
represented truth in a system that is built on deception and controlling the narrative and suppressing the narrative and lies. So I think that's the way. If it's built on lies, then truth is probably the only thing that can dismantle it. You know?
I agree. And it was clear that truth is definitely dangerous because of the ways the United States tried to suppress the song and keep her from singing it. And one of the things the movie really brought out for me was that she had this streak of social justice in her and was interested in standing up against oppression and using art for political ends.
Mhm.
And so, why do you think it's taken so long for us to be able to recognize that she had all of this social justice work in her and she really used her music to fight for the greater good?
Hmm. I mean, it's taken so long because it was meant to never be known, you know? So
Yeah.
it's not like we just were like, fuck her, we're not really worried about her. You know what I mean? Like, for lack of a better term, this is what Hoover did, right? This is what Harry J. Anslinger did. And that has everything to do with controlling the narrative. Billie Holiday was globally famous on the Marilyn Monroe and Billie Holiday. That she was incredibly famous. And but she was using her platform to speak out about racial terror, lynching in America, and she was integrating audiences. You know, she was using her voice to sort of push legislation, the Emmett Till anti-lynching bill, right, which still
Mhm.
passed today. So you know, the reality is we didn't know because we weren't supposed to know. You know what I mean? We didn't know because textbooks are designed to continue white supremacy, right? You know what I mean? In schools and colleges, and we didn't know because we were never supposed to know. We didn't know about I didn't know about hidden figures because we weren't supposed to know. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
I didn't know, you know, for a long time that black people were kept in zoos. I didn't know that a slave netted us our independence as a nation, his brave act. You know what I mean? So we were never ever truly supposed to know her as this, because she was a threat to a system of racial inequality that was being built and cultivated at the time, to white supremacy, you know. So we were only supposed to know her as a tragic drug addict who wasted her life on drugs, you know,
Mhm.
which could not be further from the truth. And the reality is, Billie Holiday wasn't, I don't think that she was stepping in to be like, I'm going to be a hero of civil rights and whatever. She was just a human. You know, you hear her talk about it very matter of factly. She's like, well, it's just not, you know, it's not right, man. You know what I mean? She's just like,
Mhm.
you shouldn't be lynching people. People should not be segregated. We should not be treated unfairly, and there should be racial equity. And so she was a very empathetic person. And I don't think it was just a choice to put her hat in the ring. I don't think she had a choice. If she
Right.
wanted to live as a free Black queer woman, that alone was a huge challenge to the system. You know what I mean? So she was just being a beautifully empathetic person, and that made her a hero, as Black women often are when they are themselves. You know.
Absolutely. White supremacy does try to keep a lot of important historical knowledge from us. So where do you go to educate yourself beyond what we're taught in schools and what we're taught in the mainstream media?
I mean, fortunately, we have the advent of the internet, though you have to vet a lot of things that you read on the internet, you know. But which is, again, that's another really tricky thing, because it's like,
Mhm.
hey, you can't believe everything you hear on the internet, and then I go test my information against this encyclopedia or whatever. But I'm like, but you forget those things are dictated by white people, by the overarching white code. So it's weird. Even what we would test the accuracy of information against is all based off of the standards of a white male patriarchy, you know what I mean? And that narrative, and what, so I often see people that will talk about Black stories and say, that's not true because I looked at, the Library of Congress. And I'm like, well, that could be your first mistake, you know what I mean? So I think it is honestly, it is a merry-go-round of research, you know what I mean? Between what would be official websites, documents, books, outlets, publications, right? Governmental pieces, and then also questioning those things and going, all right, those things had an agenda. So oftentimes for me, it comes from reading the books of my ancestors. It comes from
Mhm.
reading those stories. I'm reading Angela Davis's work and her research, right? Reading Assata Shakur's work and her research and her life experience, listening to our grandparents, and, and then doing research of what they're telling us, against things that we know have happened. Or so it's books from our culture, poetry from our culture, people who were there oftentimes are the things that I find the most informative. And also for me, I know this sounds really crazy, because unfortunately people's experience with God or with Christ, I am a person of deep faith.
Mhm.
But unfortunately, the people who seem to have the microphone and are the loudest right now are those with the most prejudice, the most sort of bigoted and full of sort of judgment and hatred. But I pray a lot about it, for wisdom constantly, wisdom about women, wisdom about Black people, wisdom about LGBTQ2S plus community, wisdom, about how to get information, to understand people, and to celebrate them, and to help support their causes. And I'm led often to really, really great sources of information from people who are on the ground. I think that's a more accurate way. But it is, this idea that's like, we'll read one book and we'll get it. Like, oh no, we got to research this, and we have to really pine for our history and for the truth of our experience.
Absolutely. It's funny. I have a podcast, and my co-host and I were talking today about how you can't get all of your information from a single book because
No,
everything is incomplete, and it's up to us to get the whole picture or to flesh out a picture. Um,
yeah,
and
absolutely.
so, yeah, we
and,
do
and,
have
and,
to do
and
that work.
it's sort of like a semantics as well too, right? You know what I'm saying? Just words and how things are portrayed. Like, we just did the soul of a nation thing, and I think it's using your common sense too to understand, okay, if I know the definition of this word, and this thing that I know to be the definition of this word is being described in this way often, right? When white men commit terrorism in America, and it's,
Hmm.
just, you know, the ways that they describe it, right? We know this was, or it's just described as murder, right? Or it's not described as a hate crime, or it's not,
Right. Or a lone wolf, or
or a
he's
lone wolf, right? Not a
misunderstood.
terrorist,
Absolutely.
exactly. You know what I mean? Um, and so one of the things that stood out to me recently, we just did Soul of a Nation,
Mhm.
and I think even for us as a people, it sounds very nuanced and almost like, oh, we don't need to pay attention to that. But I think we do, right? I do not like Soul of a Nation was such an amazing program, and I'm so glad they talked about the Tulsa, Oklahoma, Black Wall Street.
Mhm.
It gets in me when I hear people refer to Tulsa as a race riot, because a
Yes.
riot implies two sides, and so it's also common sense. That was not a riot. That was a massacre. That was genocide. That was a Holocaust. You murdered an entire city of people. You know what I mean? You were
Mhm.
bombing the city, killing them. So it's also paying attention to those little details about how we describe things, what we engage in. So that's that. It's all very, very nuanced and kind of cyclical for me.
It is. And unfortunately, we live in a culture that does not always appreciate nuance and does
That's
not appreciate taking the time to think about language. Because language, and I'm a writer, so of course I think this, but
yes.
language really does matter. And the ways in which we talk about Black history in particular matter, because when it's framed from a position of white supremacy, it seems one way. And then when it's framed from a position of actual reality, it's framed in a completely different way.
Yeah, I always reference my young cousin. I was taking care of him and he was here. And in his textbook, because textbooks are also framed from not just white culture, but white supremacy. They come, that is where they come from. You know what I mean? So, and then often the biggest manufacturer of textbooks is Texas. You know what I mean? So we think about that agenda there alone, and has always been, I believe. I might be wrong about that, but
no, I think you're right. Texas has a ridiculous stronghold on the textbook industry, and they actually dictate a lot of the curricula children across the country learn, including curricula really, that try to make slavery seem like, oh, it was just a bad day. It was like,
oh no, that's literally what it said in my young cousin's textbook. And I told him, I was like, nah, I'm gonna call your teacher, put that book down. I'm gonna teach you history about slavery. But he was in the book, it says slavery, a difficult situation. It was like, and the book all but did everything it could to paint the slaves as lazy and complaining about having to work hard in the hot sun. That was like, when you see stuff like that, you go, we have to pay attention to the details, because the details are what's going to dictate to future generations what actually happened. You know what I mean? Now in the past, So yes, I agree with you 100% there.
I think one of the best ways that we can continue to teach young people, to teach people of all ages for that matter, is through stories. And we see stories like this. Why do you think it's important that we tell stories like this and that the right people tell stories like this?
I think because, first of all, if you don't tell stories like this, then you cannot actually move forward. You can't progress as a society, as a culture. You can't heal. And if you can't heal and you can't get better, ultimately you destroy yourselves. You know what I mean? And so that's it is integral to survival, in my opinion. So we can't grow to racial equality, and if we're not telling the truth. We have to understand that if it was that important to them at the time, to sort of slaveholders on down to the Hoovers and the Anslingers of the world, and to the Reagans, and if it was that important for them to control the narrative and to lie about our stories, then it's got to be that important for us to tell the truth. And as I've said before, I think that the only thing that can dismantle a system of oppression is truth, and because that, for future generations, it goes, well, how can I be mad at Black people if a Black person helped America become an independent nation? If the sacrifice of Lafayette, I'm not recalling his entire name, so you have to kind of check me on that, but him infiltrating the enemy camp and rerouting troops, you know what I mean, as a spy, that is such a dangerous act. He was willing to give up his life for people that enslaved him, so when you know the truth about that, I think it's harder to go, well, I can't hate that guy. You know what I'm saying? I'm only here doing this because of him. Or that our American economy would have been destroyed if it was not for the contributions of Carver. You know what I mean? So I think that you have to truly know it's harder to hate someone. You still can, but it is harder to hate someone when you have access to the depth of their struggle, of their contribution, and of their triumph, and that's the only way we can actually move forward, is by telling the truth about these things. And it's funny because I know there are sort of younger generations that are like, oh, we don't want to hear stories about this and these, but we need both. We need the stories of the truth of the past, and we need the struggles and the triumphs, and we need the innovations of the future. You know what I mean? In order that convergence is where we glow and we grow, is what I like to say.
So the movie has done very well, and you won the Golden Globe. Congratulations. How do you process that kind of acclaim? Are you competitive? Do you want these kinds of recognitions?
I'm probably the opposite of that a little bit. I am extremely appreciative, very, very appreciative. And I'm going to work hard in whatever it is that I do. That's how my father raised me. And then, as I say, my Father in heaven, that is a standard, right? I always think about this scripture that talks about don't, it discourages competition. And I love that, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Because competition is a very much a human nature type of thing, you know. We believe that we have to do this in order to survive, that there's not space for everyone. But the reality is, if we're here, there is space for everyone, you know, and like
Mhm.
it's so impossible for us to envision because we've believed so long that there's not. But there's the scripture that says, don't work as if working unto man, like to beat man, but work as if working unto the Lord, you know, which is a much higher standard, you know, and self accountability. And that's a whole performance thing, not just a production, but integrity, accountability, you know what I'm saying? And how you're affecting people as you're doing the work. And so, and it to me, it just thrashes this idea that you and I are in competition,
Mhm.
especially when it comes to Black women. So, uh, so though I'm going to work hard, it's to me, even when I look at my fellow nominees, I don't say they're not competitors. These are my fellow nominees, and we're sharing a space together, and we're representing different stories, and these stories are being brought to light and being celebrated. So, you know, I'm, and as far as continuing in it, you know, I'm probably do a little more acting, but I look forward to hitting the background and doing some writing and and developing. There's a couple things I'm developing right now that I'm getting out there. So yeah, I don't know. I don't think too much about it. I just try
Mhm.
to stay spiritually grounded.
What kind of writing do you do?
Well, obviously music and
Mhm.
poetry, and right now what it is it's screenwriting. So
Oh, fantastic.
yeah, no, and I'm new, so I'm not, you know, I don't have any sort of misconceptions about like I am just gonna dive in and get it right away. I'm really, I write everything the same way I write lyrics or poetry. I dump everything out, every
Mhm.
single idea, every research, dump, and then I begin to form and I begin to craft it from there. So I'm in that phase of sort of dumping everything right now, trying out ideas. It's actually a limited series that I'm working on, and trying out different ideas of these visions that I have for how it would open. But ultimately, I want to get with a great experienced screenwriter. I just want to get all these ideas out so that we can have conversations about where we want to take it and the perspective that we want to tell it from and what my vision is for it. So, you know, to me, collaboration. I just I want these stories told. I don't need to be the one to tell it top to bottom. I want
Mhm.
great people who are experienced and who are Black and who are preferably female, but also allies as well.
Mhm.
And I just want to tell these stories. So yes, that's the writing I'm doing right now.
Excellent. Do you have a specific what can you talk about the specific project you're working on?
I cannot yet. I would love to, and I cannot wait actually
Mhm.
to talk to you about it. So we're acquiring the rights as we speak right now, and you know, working with this person, and I've gotten a bunch of research and stuff from them. So I've started, but we're still in the process of acquiring the rights. So I can't yet, but once we lock that down, then I definitely will, because it's been something that's been on my heart for years, and
Mhm.
I'm grateful to God because I believe that God has sort of exponentially, and that's really how I look at this. You know,
Yeah.
it's a blessing, but what it does is just increase the platform so that way I can tell stories about marginalized people and also give a voice and create a platform for marginalized people to tell their own stories as well. So that's the
Mhm.
goal ultimately.
That's a great goal. I don't, I think a lot of people, fortunately, we're in a great moment where a lot of people are trying to do that, a lot of Black people in
Yes.
particular. And I think also other people of color, because I think sometimes that's the only way we're going to create change is by sharing platforms and bringing other people along with us and seeing like what they do on their own.
Absolutely. I think it's the idea of passing hands, really, right? That's how
Mhm.
Tulsa, that's how Black Wall Street became Black Wall Street. I think it was it 6 or 8 times? I don't know if you can recall offhand, but
No, I
money
cannot.
passed hands in the community, I think, similar to like the Jewish community, passed
Mhm.
hands like 6 or 8 times. I can't remember exactly, but something along those lines. Money passed hands, I'll just say 6 times in the community before it ever left the community. So there was this very, very clear awareness of investing in self and in each other. And so in creating spaces for us to be great and to excel. You know what I mean? So I think that, yeah, to me, I call it, I always say that Tulsa shit. You know what I'm saying? That
Yeah.
Black Wall Street shit. You know what I mean? That's really, I think that's truly the only way we're gonna see it. That's how they became one of the wealthiest communities in the nation. So I think we you know, and why they were a threat. So yeah, we need to see that definitely now.
Who are some of the political or artistic or other voices that have really stood out to you in this moment and that you're interested in doing that Tulsa shit with?
You know, of course, people from my community. I started sort of with the artists of my community. There's it's like rappers and just singers. You know, Geminelle, Truth from Southeast San Diego, where I'm from. You know, Ryan Anthony, Marty McFly. You know, Ryan Christ Colston. You know, Mitchie Slick. You know, just people that are from my neighborhood. Well, there's also a girl I went to high school with. Jocelyn, who has a juice truck. You know, she's trying to get healthy food and healthy juice into the community. It's called The Right Juice, WRITE, The Right Juice. So it really first starts supporting those businesses, you know, and supporting them by giving voice to them, you know, making people aware of these businesses, and then just making sure also as I work with people, you know, I have people from multiple different ethnicities and backgrounds on my team, but really being targeted and focused about hiring and working with, you know, Black talent. But yeah, there's people, I've done work actually with the amazing Michelle Obama. So I I feel like I could just stop right there.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, I think that's a
know,
mic drop. That covers it.
yeah, a little bit of a flex, you know, I wasn't really meaning it to be, but you know, just sort of making music and using my platform to bolster, not really bolster, I mean, she doesn't need, but to be available for her efforts and what she's doing as far as educating girls, not just girls of color, but girls all over the world who have been denied education. That was with the Let Girls Learn campaign. I mean, Stacey Abrams is another one as well too.
She's incredible.
Yeah, she really is. I mean, these voter suppression laws that they're working is a direct.
My God, that's how you know she's powerful. Like they literally are like redoing the laws to like try and hem her up.
This is where I go back right to Billie Holiday. That is the same DNA. That is why they had to shut her up. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Because it's like she emboldens. She is the DNA that is in Stacey Abrams. That is a direct response to Stacey Abrams registering millions of voters. You know what I'm saying? And it's not, and there's nothing unlawful. You can't prove she did anything unlawful because she did it. She just did the right thing. And so someone said in an interview not too long ago, they said, you know, you would think the government had better things to do than more important things, or you think the FBI had more important things to do than to go after Billie Holiday. So, well, it depends on your goals are to continue white supremacy, racial oppression, systemic inequality. So if those are your goals, then Stacey Abrams gotta go, right? Billie Holiday gotta go. Those are so that it absolutely dangerous. I'm so inspired by her
too.
and her
efforts. And what they don't realize is she can outthink them every single day of the week. So whatever they come up with, people in Georgia are gonna. I mean, this kind of thing emboldens Black people.
It does.
Like,
it really
now
does.
We're gonna vote extra.
Yeah, and I think it emboldens. And the other thing that it does, which I think is really slight and we got to pay attention to, is those people who are on the fence. They shouldn't be, but they are on the fence. Stacey Abrams can outthink them because she's operating in truth and she's operating in love and in light. So if you're kind of on the fence morally, right? You've got those people who, you know, are kind of on the fence morally because, well, this is what I'm used to. This is when you see people who are blatantly lying and blatantly manipulating, and then you see someone like her who is just caring about the community and serving, it kind of goes like, I can't ignore the fact that she is doing this. And so there's also that slight line of people as well too, you know what I mean? And there's also my own councilwomen, you know, Lorena Gonzalez, also Monica Montgomery, who is now the assemblywoman in San Diego. And so just their efforts to rebuild infrastructure in neighborhoods where I grew up in Southeast San Diego, in Black and brown neighborhoods, you know, and dealing with homelessness there. So there's so many people I think that are doing just such incredible things that I love to just work with and be a part of, and some that I'm already engaged with. So it's great.
Absolutely. There's a lot, I think, happening that's really thrilling. It's sad that some of the work that they do is necessary.
Yes.
You know, like here in Los Angeles, I normally live in LA. I'm in New York at the minute, but they have the People's City Council, which is doing some incredible work of basically they created a city council that serves actual people instead of political ambitions. And
I
just
love you.
it's so good. It's so good. And every time I see some of their actions and the ways that they're standing up to the mayor and really challenging traditional political power and how it works in LA, I just think, the kids, they're okay. They've got this.
They're gonna be good. You know what I'm saying? They're gonna
We
be
just need to get out of their way. They are okay.
Yeah, we just need to support. You know what I'm saying? They're gonna be all right. Like they get it definitely. Yeah, absolutely.
So we're coming out of the pandemic, hopefully, and it's been a year. What was that year like for you? Were you able to be creative during that year?
I mean, a little bit, not as much as I would have liked to be on certain fronts because of the music. But interestingly enough, I was inspired, and so I was writing. I was actually started writing a lot more poetry again. And so just documenting what it is I was feeling, especially because I was just coming off the heels of Billie Holiday, and that had a real impact on my life and how I perceived things and how I operated. So, I think it was just really reflection, you know what I mean, and preparation. I think it also did, I will say, just reminding me that I am blessed, right? I think it was very easy to sit around and be like, oh my God, this is so hard. Oh my God, this is so, but I live in Los Angeles, right? I live in a 5-bedroom home. I live in, I am blessed. There are people who are choosing between food and between shelter, for figuring out how to parse meals between their kids. So that's a different thing. There are people newly homeless, because of this pandemic. So I think it's sort of, the creativity was more like, how can we help, and that's when we had teamed up with Give Directly last year, because I was like, I don't want to make a big splash. I just want to figure out how we can just help people. As you had said, just how do we get to people and help people? So, and then it was reflective for me as well, too. It gave me a little bit of time to just breathe. Even though I stayed in Billie Holiday for 2020, because we still had to pick up shots and whatever.
Absolutely.
It helped me to at least be her at my house. You know what I mean? In sort of the place. So it was definitely reflection, finding my spiritual grounding, again, and preparation, gratitude, just, like I said, reflection was huge for me, definitely.
What are you looking ahead to as the pandemic lifts and we all get vaccinated and life hopefully returns to a different kind of normal that maybe isn't as messed up as the previous normal?
Right. Yeah. What am I looking for? Well, first thing I'm looking forward to is vacation. I'm about to travel. I'm gonna head somewhere and take a little bit of a break. You know what I mean?
That's right.
But I mean, I think seeing family again, seeing just connecting with people. I think a big thing, and I think God used this role to make me braver in a lot of ways. So I'd like more opportunities because before if something made me uncomfortable, I'd try to figure out a way out of it. So I'm looking forward to in person, right? Showing up and saying yes and being present for certain opportunities and things that come along and just seeing what happens, I'm hoping as far as socially, that we kind of hit the ground running. You know what I mean? We go into communities that need the most help, and that we keep a heart posture of healing and of service, and pay attention not just to what is it we want to see. We need to do with taking care of ourselves as well too. But I think a part of taking care of ourselves has to do with service. So sort of like, all right, let's still acknowledge that a lot of people were hit pretty hard during the pandemic. Let's make sure they're good. You know what I mean? And
absolutely.
Now, how can we have these conversations about social justice, about equality, about economic equality, moving forward, but I think we need to kind of uplift those hardest hit, which unfortunately is our community, by this pandemic.
I agree. And I think a lot of people are going to hit the ground running without leaving anyone behind. Because
and
I
then
think
just turn up. You know what I'm saying? Everybody just turn up and have a good time.
Oh, I mean, I have never been more ready, and I'm normally quiet and shy, but no, I'm ready. I am ready to get turned. I am It's here. It's going to be the summer of Freaknik. Let's go.
It's on. It's on and popping. You let me know. Are we in New York? Are we in LA? Where are we?
We're in LA. We're going to enjoy the sun. We're going to have some drinks. It's going to be good. It's going to be good. Okay, good. I have some just rapid questions. These are lighter questions.
Okay.
What was your favorite book as a child?
Oh God, what was my favorite book as a child? Oh my goodness. You know what I liked when I was young, right? I liked a lot of those scary stories. You know what I mean? So did you remember that author? He was like, he made like, they're almost like Nickelodeon scary stories, like R.L. Stein. And
yep, absolutely. I think R.L. Stein has written like 150 books.
Yes, like I used to love, and I don't know why, because I hate scary movies and scary stories. So I'm this dumb kid, right? Reading a book like, oh my God. And then have the nerve to 10 minutes later pick it back up like
what happened? Yeah.
Like, why would I torture myself?
They were, and when I look back, they were so scary. And when I look back, I'm like, that wasn't really that scary. But as a kid, it was terrifying.
As a kid, it was terrifying. You're reading every single word. So it was like happening in your head at the same time. I used to love them books when I was a kid. R.L. Stein, Christopher Pike books. Mm-hmm. I wish I had something sophisticated. Like I only read Langston Hughes as a child. But
I wouldn't believe anyone who said that.
I did. But in my textbook was a little scary R.L. Stein book.
What did you want to be at that age when you grew up?
Always a singer, always an entertainer, always. There's never a plan B. Although I had random moments where I'm like, Mom, Dad, I think I'm going to be a paleontologist. They'd be like, okay, girl. Just like, so I thought actually, no, I will say at the time, I thought I was going to be a dancer and this prima ballerina. That would be how I would get into everything, you know. So, you know, the diet, though, of a prima ballerina is not one that is conducive to my life. So
I don't think it's conducive to anyone's life.
No, I was like,
what those young people put themselves through is brutal.
Let me tell you something. People think the athleticism of other sports, there is nothing more savage and more vicious than the world of ballet. There is nothing. It's only one swan princess. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
What is your favorite social media platform?
Instagram, because it's the only one I know how to use. Somebody the day was like, "Oh, I found Andra Day's TikTok." I says, "Well, where is that?" I was like, "I don't have." Or my baby girl here, my cousin. I take care of my young cousin. Baby girl said, she said, my other young cousin. And so I was like, well, why don't we go live on my you know, TikTok? She said, okay, blah, blah, blah. And then we go to my phone and to put it in. She was like, you don't have a TikTok. I was like, oh.
TikTok is a lot. I'm just dipping my toe in TikTok. I'm like, I'm 47. I just can't, I'm 46. I can't do all that. That's just too much work.
Yeah.
Who is one person you love to follow on Instagram?
Oh my God. There is this, oh Lord, I'm just going to say it because I'm obsessed with her. There is this trainer. There's this trainer couple. They're a married couple, Kathy Drayton and Luther Freeman. And they know I stalked them on social media because I've like worked with them before. And I was like going to work with them for the movie, but it just like didn't work out. And so I have it like, I got to like hit them back, but I obsess over her page because she just has earned her body in such a beautiful, like hard work, earned her body, hard work, you know, not to knock anybody who goes and gets like, to me, whatever choice you beautiful, women are beautiful, whatever choice you decide to make with that body, that's yours. You know what I mean? You're beautiful. But so she's really built her body like in the gym, and I'm just like, oh. Meanwhile, I'll be on my couch looking at social media, eating chips, like, oh, fine, I'll go do 10 squats. Like, she make me do 10 extra little reps. You know what I'm saying? Like, no, I'm obsessed with her though. It's a hard worker. I like people with a work ethic like hers, and her husband with the Freeman too. That's
impressive. I follow my trainer on Instagram, and I love her, even though I hate her when we meet. But when I look at, like, she literally exercises all day, every day. I've never seen anything like it. I'm like,
wow, you really just like live for this, huh?
It's about that life. I couldn't be me.
Yeah, me too.
What's the best piece of advice you've been given?
The best piece of advice I've been given is really from my parents, and it is to not let fear dictate my decisions. Fear is a liar. You know what I mean? And so to not let fear decide what I'm going to do for me. You know?
Okay. And lastly, what do you like most about your work and what you do?
Oh, what I enjoy about my job. I was like, I don't like nothing I produce. No, what do I like most about it? I like the people. I like people. I do like people. I know that everybody, you know, yeah, people do some crazy shit sometimes, you know. But again, I don't want fear of somebody screwing me over to dictate how I interact with people as well too. I like people, you know, and I think that has to do with my faith. It says, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself." I love loving my neighbor, and I love being loved by my neighbor. I like people, their experiences, learn. It's enriching to meet most of the time. Even when you meet somebody who you're like, I'm not supposed to engage with them anymore, you're still enriched because now you know that.
It's like a built-in warning system.
There
Amazing.
you go, boom.
Well, thank you so much for your time this evening. I know how these press days can be, so I appreciate you taking some time out.
Thank you so much, Roxanne. You're a blessing. We'll speak soon, though.
Yes,
Definitely.
you will.
Have a good time with you.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.